What's going on? What's going on? All right. Welcome. Let's see here. We're just waiting for Lily to come on in. Where's Lily? There she is. There she is. There she is.
Look, I'm gonna light it up just for you.
Oh, snap.
I'm gonna light it up.
Palo Santo.
I'm gonna light it up. You know what? I need to clear myself because you've been dropping some wisdom bombs. So I'm just here to live in your world. I'm just here to be in your world, girl.
No, you're the one that's been dropping the bombs with your videos, and like you're just giving it to us raw. Don't say it.
What are we talking about today, Fran?
You know,
what are we talking about?
A bunch of stuff. Let me see here. Welcome, everybody. It's good to have you here. As you can see, Lily's nostril. We told you there's going to be some shenanigans up in here, okay? We will give you those shenanigans. But today is about plants. Of course, we got to talk about the plants. We're going to talk about unpopular opinions. I might say some things that some people might not like to hear, but you know, we're not here for content. And we'll answer any questions too about plants, about anything that comes up through this conversation. And, you know, we're just going to have a good time in the process, right?
Right. And we're here to talk about like fear too. I feel like a lot of fear comes up around this and there's a lot of myths around it. So we're here to talk about fear.
Fear.
And also, can I complain for a minute?
Go for it.
I'm going to start off real like downer. I'm going to start off like a downer, right?
Here we go.
So we have something called June gloom in LA. Anybody who's in here right now lives in LA, give me a shout out. June gloom in LA, right? Where it's foggy all month long. No, it's been rainy and foggy since you last were here in October of 2022. So I feel like we got April showers, May gray, June gloom, July is all a lie, August, foggiest.
Yeah,
I'm over it.
Here. It's over here is cool too. I'm just like, you know, some people say the end of times are coming.
Some people say the end of times.
Every time I see on Instagram, they're like, the Bible saying, but the end of times are coming.
Yeah.
So
end of times because LA ain't sunny. That's exactly right. Anyway, I got my toilet paper, everyone, because I'm my nose is sniffling, and I got my tea because we're here to serve some tea.
Oh my God. All right, so fear.
Let's talk about it.
I feel like fear is such a deep programming for people, for all of us, including myself in this conversation, because I definitely have my own set of fears. And I feel like this fear-based programming is really getting in the way of a lot of things for people. And what I mean by a lot of things, of course, this conversation is geared towards plant medicines, but in general, just like trying something new, getting out of your comfort zone. For some reason, I think people believe that everything is supposed to be comfortable. Did you know that? Everything's supposed to be and you know, and there's this idea that like I cannot go through life feeling discomfort.
Yeah, and I think the Western world carries this idea of like what I see when I envision sometimes the Western world and how we kind of maybe babysit trauma. There's always an extra padding on something. There's always like a catering to. There's always a like trying to be too careful, not to trigger anybody, not to rock the boat too much. Yeah. Like we're really good at this in the Western world. Really good at this. But my favorite thing that you said to me over voice message today, when people are afraid of discomfort, you're like, well, how's that working for you?
Real talk. Is it? You know, and when I hear blame or anything And here I go doing it again, right? Every time you try to say something, you're like, but this is what I really mean, and I'm trying to have all this inclusive language, but really, you can't go through life without a bit of discomfort. It's even
Yeah.
if you take it as something as simple as like dating, right? I'm gonna ask somebody out. I might be nervous to ask somebody out, but that could be the love of my life, right? Am I really sacrifice the discomfort, right? Am I really not lean into that discomfort? No, be the love of my life. You know what I'm saying? Like, how much is discomfort worth for you?
Oh, look at who shows up. Dr.
Oh,
Joe trying to
snap.
sneak in on our lives. Oh, snap. We're talking about fear today.
Wait a
Oh,
second.
snap.
What's going on?
Well, and he's a perfect example of somebody who didn't have a lot of fear coming into this because so much was raining and pouring down on him. And we definitely find people at that breaking point, right? So much shit has happened and they're sick and tired of being tired, right? So they're like, I surrender.
Yeah.
I surrender. And sometimes it has to get to that point. And I remember, like, as cheesy as sometimes people think Tony Robbins is, he has some of the greatest advice. Like one time he said that people don't make a change when they feel just a little discomfort. They make a change when they're disgusted.
Yeah.
Like he used the word disgusted, and it really is more of like what is that version of disgusted for you, right? Like it could be a different word, but he's making the point is like we all live in our little like status quo of discomfort. We've just gotten used to our smell of shit.
Yeah.
Right. But sometimes you have to press so far that you will like make that change. And so sometimes you find people in plant medicines that way. They're like, okay, I played that route for like 10 years, which is like you and I, right? 10, 20 years. And we're like, okay, I checked all those boxes. So time to shit my pants in an ayahuasca ceremony, right?
Right.
So
yeah, you have to, you're right about that, because you have to be at a place where it's like, you're just so fed up with yourself. And I remember, I always go back to the story, and it might be new for some folks, but when I finally decided to go on my journey to lose weight, I remember looking in the mirror and I was like 232 pounds. And I was like, holy shit. It was like the first time I saw myself. And I was 30 years old. And I was like, Francis, you've been like this for how long? So the veil, right? Sometimes the veil hasn't been lifted high enough for us to actually see the truth. When they say real eyes, like those real eyes actually started to show for me. And I was like, this isn't it. It was pure vanity metrics at the time. It wasn't because I wanted to lower my blood pressure or anything like that, although that wasn't an issue, but it was pure vanity metrics at the time. But then I realized I had to get to that point, because it wasn't, when we have stuff that we're going through, it's not something that just happened overnight, right? We've been putting deposits for years, months, days, hours. We've been putting the work in for our limitations. And so when that load finally gets too heavy, that's when we're like, okay, I don't care how afraid I am about this. I have to do something. I got to do something different. And that's usually people that come to us. Yeah, go ahead.
I love that story, because it gives like a perfect visual. And like for me, it was my divorce, because I was in a relationship that I knew I shouldn't have been in and that wasn't working.
Yeah.
But for ego reasons, I was like, I'm not gonna be like my mother and get divorced right away. I'm gonna work this out, and tried to stick with it. And he was the one who decided to leave. And
wow.
That was a hit to my ego, because it was like, you get to choose to leave me when I wanted to leave you. No, me first, right? Like,
yeah.
It was an ego hit, but it was the greatest gift I could ever be given, because it was like left with that loneliness, left with just me, left with just like all my ick by myself.
Yeah.
And so again, do I choose, like you said, you're like, wait, that road I could keep going, or right? I didn't want to become what I was, my greatest fear was become that bitter old woman who just hates men and all she does is talk about men this, men that, screw that, da da da, right? And I could see it going in that way where I just blamed somebody else for the rest of my life. And that's how I found Christine Hassler, which is what you and I have in common.
Yeah.
We met at a retreat with one of our favorite coaches where we took a chance, favorite coaches of all time. We took a chance on ourselves and just said like, hey, I'm doing something different. She's doing weird ass shit at this retreat. I don't care. Tell me, what are you going to do? Oh, okay. We're going to do an anger burn and with pool noodles against the wall. We're going to scream and curse out in the woods.
I was so stiff at that retreat. I'm not going to lie. I was like, yo, where the hell am I? And who are these people? I was so uncomfortable at that retreat. And I definitely made an effort, but I definitely was tight, right? Because it was the most out of the box thing I've ever done, really, and in a very vulnerable context. And so that adjustment was huge for me. But I knew at the end of it, I was like, damn, you really didn't fully lean in, right? But it was for me to say something is not working. Truly not. Like I knew something wasn't working, but when I went through that and all the walls that I had up, I knew that there was more work that I needed to do. And I did.
Yo, you should see Frances's eyes at that retreat the whole time. She was like this, locked in. What the fuck are these people doing?
I mean, the eye gazing, like I had to gaze in other people's eyes. Like that was weird for me. You know, when you grew up in a household where like affection wasn't a thing, like there was no like that. So for me to put myself in a situation where there was all this touch and love and all this, and I was like, oh, what? Get away from me.
Yeah, and we went in because it wasn't like just like a day workshop where you're like feminine flow, guys, feminine flow. This was legit deep work, and you just keep going in and into people's souls, right? Because when you're looking into somebody's eyes for not just 30 seconds, but minutes upon minutes, and then it just continues and continues, you're like, damn. And I think where I had one up on you is that I had been to one of her retreats before, right? So I went through the awkward part before. So I was like, okay, I'm ready. I could do this. But I appreciate you saying that because you don't have to be fully prepared for everything that happens at a retreat. You don't have to be prepared. It's not like there was a test, right? There was no test. It was just like, it's a great measurement for like, where am I at with myself? Where am I at with discomfort?
Exactly.
Where am I at with my heart? Where am I at with human connection? Where am I at?
Yeah.
That's it.
And I think for anyone who really wants to move past fears, because fear will be there to a certain degree, right? It just depends on the magnitude of that fear. And then the goal over time is that it's so small that you're like, I'm scared, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Is that, you know, I always tell my clients, put yourself in spaces, and this is what I do. I literally put myself in spaces where I have to be that uncomfortable. Like, I'm doing this 30-day live thing, and I'm like, I'm thinking about, oh man, I gotta go live later. What am I gonna say? And I'm trying not to plan because that's the introvert in me, and that's uncomfortable for me each and every time, right? So where can you put yourself in spaces of discomfort so you can stretch that muscle? It's a muscle, right?
Yeah, and for me, that used to be improv. I took 3 years of improv.
Love improv.
3 years in improv, and I was about to shit my pants before going to every single class. Every single class. No joke. And you would think because I'm an extrovert and because I'm a talker, like I like doing these things. No, because we were on a stage every single time using a different part of my brain and my expression. Yeah. And like when you've had your throat chakra kind of like closed up for most of your life in your childhood, to get on stage and do improv and these weird ass exercises, you're like, this is too much. But guess what? Where improv led me, I don't think I tell this story a lot. because of improv and because of those 3 years, I won a car on a game show once on national television. No joke. No joke. This was because of improv. Because guess what? They put you on the spot at these game shows when they interview you, right? Everybody thinks that they're just like randomly picked. They're like, come on down, Lillian. And they just like happen to pick me. No, it's all kind of articulated before and manipulated. They want to know that you can play a character, and they want to know which one and how and when. And they want to know you can keep your energy up. Right? So they ask you on the spot all these random questions, and guess what? I was ready. I was like, I'm ready. Like,
I didn't know you did years of improv. I didn't know it was 3 years.
3 years. But I hated it. I hated all 3 years. I hated it. And you know what? You know why? I'm being totally honest too. And you know why I kept going? Because the teacher kept reaching out. He's like, you're gonna sign up again? Because like every 6 months we had to sign up, and I'm like, okay. But I should probably have told them that, like, because of improv, I won a car. Because they don't pick people who are like, hi, my name is Lily, and yeah, I like cats. Yeah. Right? They pick people that are like, woo!
What's going on?
You know, like
the foolishness. Yeah, go up your alley. I wouldn't wear. I'd be like,
I was like dressed up. Yeah, I was dressed up in a chandelier costume, and I was Wayne Brady's assistant. Wayne Brady's, I know, improv for skills for life, for real, Daniel. I was Wayne Brady's assistant. He made me an assistant, so I was handing out money and deals to these other guests that were on. He was like, let me pick this cute little girl as my assistant, right? I was like, I know what game you're playing. I know what game you're playing. And then randomly, he asked this guy, what's your hidden talent? And I end up finding this guy's hidden talent is Bollywood dancing. So they just start playing music, and I have to pretend I know Bollywood dancing. This guy's like, wait, what show? Dude, I don't even know what episode. I cannot watch it again. I can't watch myself. I don't even know what episode. There's been so many of those like shows. Yeah, they won't have my name either because they don't do by name. They do by episode. So good luck with that. Good luck with that. But it was 10 years ago, and I just kind of got it, and because of that, I think it'll serve you well. Maybe you'll win a car.
Maybe. Because everything is connected, right? So
Yeah.
if we start yes to things, then the universe sort of opens up and just kind of continues to leave us breadcrumbs and things that we could pick up along the way. But if we close ourselves off, then we're not going to make those kinds of connections, right? We're not going to meet the people we meet, and we're not going to gain the things that we need to gain. And it's like,
Yeah.
you know, we can talk about fear all day long. We can have fear-based conversations about this. Oh, I'm not ready. This, but what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? What's the plan here, right? Not to be all in the mind, but fear doesn't like logic. So the best thing that you could do is dance with that fear as much as possible, so you don't prevent yourself from the expansion that's supposed to happen for you.
Yeah. And if I hadn't danced with that fear, I wouldn't have made a fool of myself on national television. Let me just tell you.
Yeah. Everybody would have missed that opportunity.
By the way, you got to pay taxes on that car. If you win a car on national television, you got to pay taxes. And you're not allowed to tell anybody. You're not allowed to tell anybody until the episode comes out. So you got to keep it quiet.
That must have been hard for you.
Hell yeah, it was. I told everybody in secret. I signed an NDA, but I still told people.
You ain't coming for me. What do you think? Are there some fears around the plant medicines? Like, what are some people around?
You know, I did a poll on my Instagram, and the top two fears that came up were about the fear of losing control and the fear of having a safe environment. Those were the top two, like, highest percentages in as far as concerns and worries. And this is people of all backgrounds. That's what I loved about doing this poll, because it was like interaction I got on a poll and I screenshotted it. And I was like, oh, I should address these. So I'm glad we're addressing it today. And I'm curious to know what you think about those two. So the fear of losing control, right? And then not having a safe environment. And losing control can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So
yeah, I guess the question too is like, we all have this false sense of idea that we have control. We don't have any control, right? The only thing that we can control is ourselves. You always heard that, like that's you. The only thing that we can control is ourselves, our thoughts, our decisions, the choices that we make or don't make. But everything else, it's up for grabs. Like we don't have control of that. So even the word control doesn't even make sense in a way, because you don't have control of anything. And I get where it comes from, right? Especially if you live in a chaotic household, then maybe you don't have a lot of control. And so this is your way of maintaining a false sense of control, right? And what does control mean for people? It means feeling safe, right? Knowing what's going to happen next, the predictability, because maybe they didn't have predictability growing up. So like you said, there's a lot of layers to it. But sometimes it's exactly what we need to unravel. You've been holding on to control for so long. Again, how's it working for you? And we go back to
that. Your butthole's so tight. Like, how's that working for you?
How's it working for you?
Right?
Colon's all back.
Well, and I love you. Yeah, I love you talk about that, because yesterday or the day before on Dr. Julia's live, I talked about safety, and I talk about this a lot in terms of the nervous system, because, right, like safety is felt in the body, not just in the mind, right? And when I teach about polyvagal theory, what comes up around safety is there's three things that people usually need to feel safe. And I find they pop up in different ways, especially during our soul sessions. Yeah. So safety can be felt if you have a connection with somebody else, so somebody that you trust. And I understand that's important in plant medicine journey, because you're going on a journey, right? So you got to have some type of trust within self and some type of trust within another. And usually you don't have a lot of trust in another if you don't have trust with self. That's actually really hard to get. So that's real. Safety in trusting self and another. The second one is usually context, which we get a lot. It reminds me of like your first day of school, when you're like, you have no idea what's going to go on because you've never been to freaking school. You just have a bunch of shit in your backpack that you went to go shopping at Target for, and you have no idea what your teacher is going to do or say or what the program is. And then you start noticing there's a calm down, just like in our soul sessions, when people are like, what goes on? How do we start? How do we end? What what's the daily feel like? What do I bring? That helps people create safety. And then the last thing is realizing that we always have a choice, not just in a plant medicine ceremony, but everywhere in life. We think we're going to lose control because we don't have the right to say no or yes to something. We don't have the right to, feel out our full body yes or no, whatever that is. So those are the three things that I always talk about when it comes to what makes you feel safe. So I always encourage people, ask yourself what makes you feel safe versus just saying this is not safe. Is it just different? Is it just different? Christine Hassler used to say that. How about we don't say it's dangerous or it's scary. How about we say it's different? So how can I feel safety within something that's different? The
word choice.
And then win a car.
I mean, the word choices are so important because we can use language that keeps us feeling safe, right? Or we can use language that helps us to feel a bit more safe. And I think, the world that we live in, sometimes, questions aren't always invited. Ask all the questions, ask away, even if it's a, and some people feel like, I can't ask this. Ask. If that what's make you feel safe, ask, because someone is going to be open to hearing those questions, right? If you get somebody that's like, no, or just tries to shut those things down, then that is a red flag, right? And somebody will know how to delicately sort of, say things in a way that, okay, that's enough for me, right? And that could be a mutual resonance. Like, okay, that's enough. I don't need to know about that. So again, it's like getting underneath of that safety to find out what's really going on here, so that you can actually not prevent having an experience. right? That you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, it was the show Let's Make a Deal. People are still stuck on my story. I love that. It was Let's Make a Deal. Guess what? I won twice on that show. Not to brag or anything, but I won 6 years later. So they have a deal with you that you're not allowed to win on any game show. If you're on The Price is Right, it has to be like 10 years.
Yeah.
I think they extended that, but if you're on Let's Make a Deal, it's only 3 years and you can win again. Anyway, I digress. But yes, I like that you said that, because what we do with the plant medicine, we always invite people to be like, whatever weird question is on your mind, ask it. Like, we know it's there. Because I used to have it. And like, you know, a little weird question that we get is like, will I lose my brain? Will it disintegrate? Right? What if I don't come back? Okay, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? What does that mean? My first hero's dose, I remember being like at the height of my hero's dose, and I kept telling the facilitator there, I don't want to close my eyes because I'm not going to come back. And she was like, where are you going to go? And I was like, there. You know, like I just keep... Because I could just imagine this world, this tunnel I was getting sucked into. And it's like, you realize that fear doesn't make sense, right? Fear doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It is not in logic. It just, the stories you make up to. And you know, the whole point of doing some of these things is, if you go through this deep transformative journey, you really want to go back to that old life? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, the whole point is to not go back to that thought process. It's not to go back to that old way of living, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, I don't want to go back. But I get it. You know, the uncertainty, you know, we've been sort of programmed to not trust uncertainty, right? And uncertainty that is going to, it's part of this existence, mystery to life, a mystery that we must sort of accept, so that we can move past some of these things. Like, you know, it's just the constant looping. So
well, sometimes you're used to your own, like I said, your own shit smell, right? And so at least if you, I know I'm always nasty, right? I'm always like dirty. I'm always talking about poop. I made a film about Mr. Toilet. So the thing is like, I do realize this because I've been there and I still sometimes am there, is that, well, at least I know my own shit, right? But I don't know that. And I think that's right. Like you say, that people come into these spaces because they do want a different direction. Yeah. They do even want new neural pathways to kind of connect. And by definition, you will be different. Yeah. Like on a cellular level, you will be different. Yeah. Like, hooray, let's celebrate. Hooray. Like, I don't know why I say hooray.
I mean, it works for this.
Do you say hooray? Like in your daily life? I don't say hooray.
Or, I mean, it's something new. It's working.
Yip, yip, hooray. Well, yeah. I mean, that's what we say after every ayahuasca ceremony. Yip, yip, hooray.
Oh, Lord. Don't get Lily, Lord. All right. So the other fear was not coming back. I think we sort of addressed that. Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say to people talk about this idea of making plant medicine more accessible?
I get that question asked a lot. And I know why I get that question asked, because I am of Maryland presentation.
You are?
I guess this lifetime. And my question, and I never actually get to fully iron this out with people because, sorry about that. I never get to fully iron this out with people because it's usually just like a throw-on question. There's no space for me to go back and forth and ask some other questions. But I always ask, like, what do you mean by accessibility, right? What does accessibility mean? And in what way has it been used in our society to create some sort of tension or conflict in some shape or form, right? You know, I think we're programmed to believe that some people have, some people don't have. And what does it mean to sort of buy into a language that essentially impacts your overall journey. So if I believe I don't have access to this thing, then I'm not going to actually pursue this thing that could be very beneficial for me. And there's different levels of quote unquote accessibility, right? So I feel like if you got an iPhone, you know what I'm saying? Come on now. You got an iPhone, there's some sort of accessibility. You know what I'm saying? Okay. But, you know, if you continue to sort of ask those types of questions and buy into that kind of language of lack or better than or have not, or someone has more than me, you know, how is that sort of getting in the way of what you're trying to achieve on this journey, right? You know, what would happen if we moved away from that word accessibility? Because I feel like that's really people. And it's not, I feel like if you're the average person, right? Everybody, most people, you know, they have a job or something. You know, does accessibility mean that you may have to budget for some of these things? When I was on my healing journey, I never once thought this isn't accessible to me. I just knew that like something had to change and I need to figure this shit out. So when I went on that retreat, I didn't have the money for that retreat. I had a credit card. I put it on the credit card. It took me a while to pay it off, all that stuff. So what kind of things can you move around in your world to make this accessible? Are you waiting for somebody outside of you to create that accessibility? Like, are you waiting for somebody to tell you, okay, now it's accessible, come on in? Like, is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Because we don't necessarily to do it in that capacity. I bet if I sat down with somebody and we're like, okay, let's take a look at these finances. Like, what are we doing? How can we get there? Sure, there are some people who are really, truly in survival mode. So maybe now is not the time. But can you make a plan, right? Can you make a plan to get there? So I think that whole question, I don't know. It kind of rubs me a certain way. And I try not to buy into that language because these plants are accessible to anyone and everyone.
You know, that's some real talk. What this made me think of is very first time I saw a video with our mentor, who's one of the shamans that comes to the retreat. In summer of 2020, a lot of shit was going down. And she said something that changed the way, like, my trajectory, because it was the way she said it. She said, be careful how the movement moves you. And I'm telling you, I was like, wow, there's something here, because everybody was getting taken by the matrix, by the languaging of the matrix, by what you should fear for the current moment. All of it was fed to you, right? And so when I think about language, I think about, okay, who told me that? Who told me these things, right? Did I come up with this myself? And so when you say something's not accessible, I say reframe that. How do I make it accessible to me? Because we sometimes can take on identities of others and just keep moving that around, because it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not accessible to me, it's not accessible to me, it's not accessible to me, so it's going to keep showing up like that. And what you were talking about is a value. Like, you value growth so much that you move shit around, right? Some people will spend so much on a bachelorette party or an engagement party or like $30,000 on a wedding, Christmas presents. But when it comes to investing in your self-growth, in like a life transforming event, then it's kind of like all of a sudden shit changes. It's not accessible. So I think, when she said that, it really hit a chord, because it was like, don't ask the questions that everybody else is asking. Don't ask those same questions, because you're going to get the same result. And
everyone different. So that question doesn't necessarily apply as much as we want to try to make it apply. Because when this person asked this question, it was like, what do you think? How do you feel like it's not available to BIPOC communities? And I'm just like, wait, we've had plenty of folks come in and they were from all different backgrounds, all different ages. So you're getting that from a dominant language, right? The dominant agenda. You're being fed by that. and you're starting to believe that things are, you're bought into that belief, and that's not true. So that is a distorted way to think about it, and I invite people to be mindful of limiting language, because that is definitely going to get in the way. If you really, and we know, like, if you really want, I'm not encouraging people, but if you really want some psychedelics, if you want some mushrooms, you can find somebody. You don't necessarily have to go to a 7-day retreat. You don't necessarily have to do this sacred thing that we're doing here. You can get access to it. Again, I say, if you have a smartphone, if you have a car, because when I was going through the process, and at that time, I was like working for myself. I was working on commission, so money was like here, then it was gone. It was here, and it was gone, and I was going through the motions. But I was like, yo, I cannot live like this. And when you cannot live like this, you're not gonna ask, is it accessible? Okay, you ain't gonna ask that question. You're gonna be like, how, where, when, why, how can I do it? What is the payment plan? How can I
intern? Can I intern somewhere, or whatever you got to do? Can I volunteer? Like, yep, it's true.
And had I not did that retreat in 2016, I don't know where I'd be right now, because I feel like it was the catalyst to everything else in my life. Seriously.
Yeah, same with Christine 10 years ago. That was a catalyst for everything else in my life. My divorce plus her was a catalyst for the trajectory I'm on now, because a whole other window opens when you don't do things the same way. And I remember our very first retreat we did, we had this wonderful lady. I'll keep her name private, but I remember she said, I don't think I'm gonna be able to do it this time around because of finances. But everything in her soul was saying, now's the time. I'm sick and tired. Like, I'm so committed. I have to do this, right? And at first we didn't think we were going to see her there, because we're like, sure, come back another time. And I think she ended up talking to her family how important this was to her. This was so important to her. And when you speak it out loud, it's amazing what the universe will conspire on your behalf. And her family ended up all pitching in to pay for it for her.
Beautiful.
Like, what? Right? And so those are the open doors that you leave, right? And I want to remind people in the shamanic world, it's a bridge to the spiritual world. So we're all the same. We all become the same there. There's no more identities. You have no identity. You can't hold on to that, but I can't do this, but I can't do that. Like, you can't hold on to any of that shit anymore. So
yeah, the plants don't know what you're talking about when you bring all those identities. They're like, wait, what are you talking about? And then when you go to experience, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. I get it.
Right.
And I just invite folks to lean in and find a way, because this is your life. This is your life. This isn't just like, I'm gonna get a new living room set. Okay, this is your life. How much is it worth?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I always ask my clients, like, are you okay being like this in 1 year, 5 years? If nothing changes, will you be content being exactly where you are, feeling the exact same feelings, having the same thoughts with the same people, all of that? Will you be okay? And if you're okay with that, cool beans, right? And we all have a choice. And so make it happen, Captain. It is possible.
Make it happen, Captain.
Why do you find that funny?
It's so nerdy. It's like you're a teacher. It's like your 4th grade teacher. Okay, get out there this weekend and make it happen, Captain.
Well,
cheers.
I think people forget. I'm a mom, so I did do all that chat, work with kids for a long time.
That's true. Okay, what we got next? What are we going to talk about next?
I think another question that's important to address is what happens when something goes wrong. Or I guess, well, I'll let you go first. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sometimes people ask us, because, right, they're trying to gather how safe they'll be, again, at retreats. And they're like, what if something goes wrong, right? What if I die? What if you have to intervene? Like, what happens, right? What's your backup plan? And I find that interesting because it's like a valid question at the same time. It's interesting and it's valid because there's fear there, and there's something underneath that fear of why you think that's going to happen. But then I'm trying to think of how to say this. You go first, and let me think about how to say this.
Like, it's saying to me, if I get too uncomfortable for too long, it's like when you get on a roller coaster ride, right? Can't I just get off if I'm done? No, you stay for that ride until that ride is over, right? And so I think it's like, again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. What is the threshold of that discomfort? How long can you really hang in there? Because we will do everything that we can to avoid it. We already know that. Like, that is just people in general. And knowing that, and if you're asking that question, then that challenge for you is to move forward. If you're comfortable for too long, then that is your invitation.
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, what you're talking about is like, can you just go a little bit outside of your window of tolerance, right? Like, I have this friend who talks about taking shrooms a lot, but always having a backup plan to temper his experience. And I'm very torn with it because I don't take shrooms so that I can dilute the shrooms.
Yeah.
I take it because I trust the medicine, and it's going to take me to a different dimension. In order to go that different dimension, I'm not going to dilute it with something to stop it when it gets uncomfortable. That's the whole point, is going out of the window of tolerance. So I find that an interesting process because we're not there to be like, oh, it's getting a little too uncomfortable. Let's do everything we can to stop it. Let's bring, like as if we can just give you some magical powder to all of a sudden, poof, make it go away. It's like, no, you're here and committed, but we'll walk you through it. We'll talk you through it. We'll breathe with you. We will remind you that you're safe, right? And then after, you'll be like, holy shit, I'm safe. Yeah. Like, that was awesome,
It is amazing to see people who actually commit to seeing this through, because they come out and they're just like, I did that. Like, the amount of resilience that you build by allowing your window of tolerance to stretch is amazing, because now you have a point of reference. Before, your point of reference was, I don't know how long I could do it for. Now you have a point of reference that says, wow, look at that expansion. I know I can do it again and again in different facets of my life, because this plant medicine journey is a metaphor, right, for when you go back out there into the real world, and now you can take on those challenges in a very different way, in a more open and expanded way, because you have proof and evidence that you went so far and you still came back, or you walked through it all, that sort of thing. Yeah. Beautiful to see.
Yeah. It's interesting. It reminds me of marathon training, because before I even got into plant medicines, I was like a very hyper competitive athlete. And marathon training takes more of a mental game than it does a physical game. Yeah. Because you're out there for running for hours. And the type of training I was doing was trying to run fast 4 hours. And I knew exactly how my mental state would be, right? Like, I knew the ebbs and flows of what would happen. Like, in the beginning, I feel all charged and excited by the crowd's energy. And then halfway through, I'm trying to talk myself out of quitting. Out of quitting. Yeah. No, I'm just going to run 1 more mile, and then I'm walking home. I'm not doing this anymore, right? Like, the bullshit that comes in your head, right? That you have to just manage your mind. And I feel like that really helped me for the journey, the hero's journey that you go on when you're in psychedelics. Because there's an uncomfortable part, or like in Cambo, there's a part where you might purge. And instead of suppressing it like we do in the modern world, at all costs we suppress. But in that world, it's like, thank you. Thank you for this release. Thank you for this part almost over, right? Like, it always used to be mile 18 for me. fuck, this fucking is the worst. And then all of a sudden I'd get a high at mile like 22 again, right? Here's that part, and that's like that high at the end of an IS ceremony where you're like, oh yeah, you know?
Yeah.
So that's when you, yeah.
The metaphor. Yeah. And it's just about just holding on.
Yeah.
Holding on. Yeah.
And we still do it. That's the thing. I don't want to give people the impression that Francis and I are fearless.
Oh.
Because I don't know. I still get nervous. And the reason I get nervous, and the reason all of us get nervous for plant medicine ceremonies, because it's the real deal. When you are facing you, and you don't do this stuff on a daily basis, it's not like you go to the bank looking to like, you know, face your inner demons or throw up in a bucket, right? It's not like you go to like 5 different dimensions in one day, right?
Yeah. So
I think that's healthy to be a little bit nervous,
of course,
about that, right? It's healthy.
Yeah, it's still being a little nervous, but also trusting yourself, right? And it's that dance that we do, because we still get nervous. I still like, all right, here we go. I got to breathe through it, but I use all my tools, right? We all have these tools that are accessible to us once we learn how to tap into them, right, regularly. And when we're in that process and we can just kind of like breathe and we can just remember that you're okay, right? You remember that nothing, as much as we've been taught that things are here to harm us, when you're in a plant medicine ceremony, that is not the aim. It's not aimed to harm, but to release, to let go, to evolve, to heal, right? And when I start to remind myself, oh, the medicines are here to heal. These are plants that have been around for tens and thousands of years. Indigenous plants, they are not here to harm. We
Well, and I love that reframe too, because you do have to remember, right? Because it's different and because it's new, they're not here to harm you. And I think that I sometimes remind people, and I don't love to go on this tangent, but just to kind of give people a frame of reference, is that we do things every day that are labeled as normal that sometimes kill us.
Yeah.
And I'm just being real here. Like when you get in a car and you go drive in traffic, you're at risk.
For sure.
I'm sorry, you're at risk, right? The number one killer in the United States is heart disease. Heart disease happens by doing things that we call normal in this society. Lack of exercise, eating processed foods, lots of chemicals in the body, inflammation, right? These are all normal though. We weave these in our daily life, but it's normal for people to die from that, right? Like we hear that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So sometimes when people say like, am I going to die or am I going to go away? It's like, there's so many other things that are happening that we're ignoring. And just because this is new and different, doesn't mean it carries that same risk factor. There's risk factors to everything. There's risk factor to walking out your damn door. So what? It's true.
Because it's like we forget that we're in harm's way every day, right? Harm's way every day, and then when we find something that's different, or we get introduced to something that's different, we're like, oh no, that's dangerous. Watching the news can be dangerous to your. Are you still watching? You know what I'm saying? Sending your
watching the news.
Not to get off tangent, because we did say unpopular opinion. Sending your kids to school is dangerous at this point. God damn. I always say if I had kids again, I'd homeschool them. Okay?
No, they ain't going there. They ain't going there.
What is the trade-off?
Yep.
Everything is a trade-off. And how...
Yeah, and I thought about this in church. I thought about this in church with my cat too. Well, also somebody said like the third cause of death, not now, but like a couple years ago, the third cause of death was actually with the medical system. So if you can put your harm's way by going to a doctor, just FYI. But anyway, what I thought about is, I don't know, I'm just saying shit, poking the bear, saying shit. What I thought about is like, there's this struggle I have with letting my cat outside. This is a weird story, but I'm going to tell it. Because a lot of people judge that I let my cat outside, right? has a garden that he plays in. He climbs up this beautiful tree. He goes visits my neighbors. But it makes him happy, and it's also in his natural instinct to interact with nature. It's in his natural instinct to climb, to play, to watch birds, right? But there's a risk to it, and that's what people don't like. People do not like that there's a risk, there's a small chance that my cat could, I have no idea, fill in the blank. But I have to accept that, and I think parents have to accept that with their children too, right? Do I sit here and worry about all the things that could happen to your child, to your pet, or do I choose freedom, right? Do I choose to be free and happy and your most vibrant self, right? And that's a choice I make, right? It's not that I live without some caution, but I realize I have to accept the fact that he could die. Yeah. And it's really sad, but, you know.
Yeah. And I love the connection you did, because, like, you know, my son's out in LA making it happen day by day, and as mama bear, I'm like, Lord. But you really have to accept, you know, where people are along their journey. I always say, everyone has a unique blueprint. We have to allow that unique blueprint to unfold. We cannot get in the way of someone's process. And like you said, you cannot get in the way of somebody's nature essence, right? And so we tend to forget that. And we, you know, we're all the same, but we're not the same, right? You know, we're all connected, but we all have different paths that need to be followed. And so our encouragement here is just to allow that to take place and accept the things that feel like, you know, the hard to accept. But once you do, it kind of puts you at ease. Because that
yeah,
too much. It's true.
You love that word. You love that word, resistance.
Well,
I love that word. It's like your favorite word in the world.
It is.
It reminds me though, like, I think that's the perspective that's really hard for people to embody, is that there's a shamanic perspective which says, I'm going to let you go through your process, right? I'm not going to rescue you. No. Even if it looks crazy. Even if you're going through like the depths, the darkest of the depths, even if you're throwing up all over yourself, even if you're out, you know, going to the bathroom on yourself, I'm going to let you go through your process. There is something so empowering about that, and not being rescued, right? It is really showing you that you carry all the power. Ooh. And so that piece is really something that when you kind of walk into these ceremonies, it's a whole different ballgame.
Whole different ballgame. And to see people step into their power and take with them, magic. Absolutely.
Yeah. We're like a bunch of hippies right now. We sound like a bunch of hippies. I know. We're like magic.
It's beautiful because, you know, a lot of people, they carry this powerlessness against themselves. Yeah. And it's such a false lie. Yeah. So we do have, I think, a question.
We have a question?
We have a question in the box, and there was a question in the chat. So I don't know. We do have some more things to talk about, but we've been going for an hour, so we can wrap it up. What you want to do?
Right. Sure. Let's answer the question, and then maybe I'll wrap it up with one last thing. Yeah.
All right. How would you describe when working with?
Put it on the screen.
Oh,
what are you doing? Put it on the screen. That? You're wild.
Oh,
there you go. Congratulations. Welcome to Instagram. We got a boomer on Instagram right now. She's still figuring it out, guys. Don't worry about her.
Listen, I'm 80s baby. All right. I don't know this stuff. Yeah. Your approach.
Yeah. It's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, our approach, I don't think can be explained in like a word or a phrase. That's what's so hard about these plant medicines. Is like, even when people come back from ceremonies and they're like, "How was your experience?" You're like, "I'm sorry, the English language cannot hold this. I'm sorry." But I think the most important thing that Fran and I talk about all the time is integration.
Yes.
So
yes,
reason we have like a 7-day retreat, or an example, is because her and I have both been through many different ceremonies where we either felt off, or like the experience wasn't complete, or something was missing, or something was confusing.
Yeah.
And once we went through our shamanic training with all the medicines in all the different ways in which you can kind of put this together, and then our backgrounds in mental health and that type of thing, we realized the missing piece was integrating those pieces of wisdom that we would get in these ceremonies and really embodying them in our life. And how do we even do that, right? Because you can fly to a ceremony anywhere. You can, in your backyard, you can do a ceremony. You can go to Peru and fly to a ceremony and sit with 40 other people, and the next day get on a plane and be like, what just happened, right? And I feel like there's a process, just like we talked about feeling safe and feeling comfortable and feeling connected. There's a process to kind of really easing our bodies back into nature, to purifying the body so that it's prepared for these medicines, and to creating ceremony around these medicines, sacred ceremony with an honoring of these medicines, not just a doing, an honoring.
Yeah.
And part of honoring that is giving you space and time in nature by yourself and in community to connect, and not overanalyze either.
Yeah.
To truly connect. And I think that's part of what's so beautiful about going to the middle of the jungle. You are away from your mail, your bills, your everyday streets that you drive on, your work, all your problems that you think about.
Yeah.
And you're just with the jungle, which is the medicine cabinet. And so our approach is just really like holistic. It's not treating you as if this is a pill that you take to fix something in your life. This is a process, a journey, and we're on it with you.
100%.
So
Yeah.
Mic drop.
Miss I. But yeah, it's and this is why we check in with our folks afterwards. You know what I mean? Not a lot of places do that. We check in with the folks before, during, and after. That's really important to us because we know what it feels like. And we just, I mean, I can't even add anything because you said everything.
Yeah, because everything I said was so perfect.
It was
well,
I don't have much to add, but we take this stuff really seriously, but not too seriously.
Yeah.
You know, there's always a sense of fun, but we make sure, like, not everybody, even when we have our soul sessions, it's not for everybody, you know, and we may want to end like, who is this for? It isn't for everybody. It's not. As much as I would love it, everybody, but it's not. You know, we check to see where you're at mentally, physically, emotionally, and see if you're literally ready to meet the medicines. If you're on a lot of medication, the medication does not bode well with the plant, right? And so it also depends on what kind of medication, right? You know, some medication are easier to take off than others. We've had folks that come in and they're really, you know, high blood pressure medication, or they're on antidepressant medication, and that's going to be for another year, right? Depending if they're willing to taper off that kind of medicine, because then you have to sort of change your diet and all this other stuff. So also if someone is not ready to have like difficult conversations, because stuff is going to come up, you know, are you coachable? Are you willing to have, because you didn't fly all the way to DR, pay all this money not to talk, right? Not to work through whatever it is that you're here to work through, so you can put it behind you, right? So that you can move forward. So we really check that. We see, you know, are you able to ground yourself? Are you willing to practice grounding practices to help sort of bring you to a homeostasis, so that, you know, when you're in that space, that you can actually access those tools. And I don't know if you want to add any more, because I could go on about that.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's just a reminder to people, like, that's just how we stay in integrity as facilitators, right? Yeah. We have to hold a certain safe space, so to speak, a supportive space, a really sacred space. So that's how we stay in integrity. Yeah. Is like, those are our guidelines. Yeah. The plant will speak to you. If this plant is truly speaking to you, you will be called back.
Yeah.
And we always tell people, like, if they're not ready now, we're like, the plants ain't going anywhere. Nature doesn't have a timeline.
No.
Nature's always like here. Nature's like real patient. So I think that's where that's where it is and it isn't for everybody, right? Like some people say, like, I don't need plants. I just need this. I just need that. Well, good. Okay, cool.
Perfect.
Now you know.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like for real. But then there's other people who be like, damn, like I has been speaking to me for 5 years and I'm sick of it. You know, it's just like the voice gets louder and louder. So like, let's do this.
Yeah. But just like, we get people that say, listen, I don't have no questions. I don't need to know nothing. I'm ready. And we're like,
yeah.
Do you want to know like logistics? I'm ready. You know? And we invite folks like that. Obviously, there's still a little bit of conversation, but some people don't want to ask too many questions because asking too many questions will deviate from what they're here to do. Because, you know,
right.
Overthinkers and we get a little anxious. Putting any more information doesn't necessarily help.
Yeah, and that's the thing about like sometimes people go on little like YouTube rabbit holes, you know, where you try to like look at documentaries on ayahuasca and look at all the bad things that happen. You go on like Reddit threads, right? You like going real deep. That's fine. Some people need to do that. That's fine.
Get it out.
But just be careful of other people's projections, right? Just like we started this conversation, how other people can project their identities on you and their lack. And that doesn't change anything. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It can happen in any world. So, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, send your questions. These are really good questions. How do I do that?
Is there more questions? Oh, dang, more questions. Oh, shit. You trying to poke the bear over here.
I'm trying to poke the bear. Actually, yesterday, I watched this like 30-minute YouTube video about like the public school system.
Oh, perfect.
I know.
Congratulations. This is questions for you.
Now, I mean, we already know why. I think this question is, we already know why a lot of this stuff is not taught in public schools. Like, we know that schools are not meant for education, but indoctrination. So I don't need to go any further with that. You're more than...
Frances sometimes likes to stay away from this. She likes to sit in her corner and stay away.
Once in a while, I
stay away from these conversations.
Once in a while, I poke the bear. But we already know.
It's so true. I think it just comes from like a systematic thing. Like how I view a lot of things is that once I feel like I opened another dimension, so to speak, of my mind or whatever you call it, right? I realize the system we live in that we get really programmed to, whether it's public school, whether it's government, whether it's anything, you have to be really clear on like, is this from fear or is this from love, right? Even when you're watching like a president give a speech on TV, you have to ask yourself, is this from fear or is this from love? Is this news headline in fear or in love? Yeah. Is that really popular reel that's like going viral? Is that fear or is that love? Right? And then you'll start to make connection of like what all this is rooted in. And sometimes the fear means control, right? Yeah. Sometimes the fear means don't look, just stay here, right? So there's different like variations of that, and we all can get caught in it. Don't get me wrong, like when we go off on these like rabbit holes, we can get caught in it because it's like fun to watch sometimes. Yeah. But the whole world's a stage, and I really love sometimes watching it for entertainment value. But if you're taking a lot of this seriously, then you go, oh damn, you know. And I think we're still deprogramming, like even now, and that's part of psychedelics, still deprogramming the ways that we grew up. Like think about it, like our parents were programmed in the system, and then we get programmed in the system by going through school. And then God forbid if you go to college, you get another program. God forbid if you go work at an office in 9 to 5, you get another program.
Oh my God.
Program.
So even like programs.
This is why everybody thinks I'm so weird, because I couldn't understand why we have to act like this and we have to talk like this and we talk like this and we talk like this. I never understood what's happening. I kept asking people like, why is everybody walking around like robots? But now I understand.
Yeah, and I
right?
did for a long time. I did that programming for a long time. I did the linear path, you know, got the degree, did all that, and then I was like, and I took my son through that path because I thought that was the case, and then I realized, shoot, that wasn't the case. So, you know, too many free thinkers causes problems. Too many causes problems. So,
well, and the whole system would fall, right? And then we'd have to create a new one. And I think that's really scary to people because what does a new one look like? And I think that's a good question to start with. Yeah. We don't know. We don't know what a new system looks like. That's a great place to start.
Look at
you know?
That's good.
Well, I always think about this stuff. I always rabbit hole on this stuff.
I know,
it's like, it's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I rabbit hole on this stuff. But I love what this person said. Yeah, it always comes down to fear and love. You know, one of the best quotes I ever heard is that love and fear are not opposites because love knows no opposer.
Girl.
Love doesn't have any opposition.
I gotta change my post now. That was good.
Welcome to Oprah Soul Session.
It stands alone on its own, right? It's love sort of, and I love that love actually just dissolves everything.
It also loves your fear. It also accepts your fear.
Look at that. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you. Send Venmo or Cash App.
I know Soul Divine had a question about want to know where at Campbell. Right now I do the Campbell at the retreats. I do private journeys. I haven't announced that I do private journeys yet, just because I move around a lot and I'm very nomadic. But usually when I do it, sometimes it's going to be in the DR or private location. So if you want more information, send a private message. Remember PMs?
Yeah.
But
yeah. And I told Francis next year we should do a mini retreat in the States. I mean, we like leaving, to be honest. There's a lot of value added when you leave the States. Yeah. But for people who kind of want like a mini version of a purification, I've thought about doing a Kambo cleanse here in the US. So I'm always open to that as well. Kambo is one of my favorite fast and furious medicines, fast and furious warrior medicines. Cleanse that shit.
Yep, and I'm ready for my 3-day Kambo cleanse. But you guys have, I think we're pretty much done, and we'll probably maybe do another live. Coming up October 22nd, 7-day retreat, early bird pricing ends July 15th. If you're on my newsletter, June 15th announcing. July 15th, early bird pricing ends. We'd love to see you there. You know, the link is in the bio if you want to find out more information about the retreat, and then schedule a soul session, chat with us, and see where it goes.
I love it. You'd be down for a mini retreat. Just get me started. I love it. Just get me started. Come on down.
Let's go.
It has to be Kambo and some psilocybin. Right? And we ending with some dancing around a fire. Yep.
Okay.
And then you're just off and running.
Yeah.
We'll find the location. You know, if you build it, they will come. Right?
There you go. Much.
All right.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.